down with the virtual machine. Now, this might be a little confusing to you. Okay, I've told you that there's a disk file, and then I've told you that there's a configuration file associated with that disk file. You can actually take this VMDK file and directly copy it to some other location, some other vCenter server somewhere, and then create a new configuration file that is associated with this VMDK file. You don't actually have to send the VMX file with it, but you can. If you want the virtual machine to maintain the configuration that you've given it, well, then you'll send both files. If you're just interested in what the contents of the disk are, well, then you'll just send the VMDK file. This is the logical metaphor here would be somebody needs a copy of or an instance that I have here on this physical computer. I can either send them the hard drive, and they can put that hard drive in a similar feeling, similar configured computer, or I can send them the entire computer. In certain circumstances, it may be easier to send them the entire computer. Other times, it may be easier just to send them the hard drive. So these two files are really the most important ones that you need to be aware of because they're really the guts of your virtual machine. The VMDK file, I like to think of it as the VMDK file might be the body of the VM, with the VMX file being the brains of the VM. There are a number of other files here as well. Obviously, the log file is where all of the key log information is stored about that virtual machine. There is this vswap file here that usually is created at the time the virtual machine is powered on. If I power this virtual machine off, this file gets zeroed out. The vswap file is there as essentially a swap location for the virtual machine's uses, and the size of this swap is generally about equal to the amount of associated RAM that you've targeted or you've applied to that VM. You'll see there are in fact two vswap files here on this VM. The NVRAM file here is more or less just the contents of the virtual machine's BIOS. There are also a VMSD and a VMXF file that you see here. Now the VMSD file, which is currently zeroed out, is the contents of any snapshots that have been created for this virtual machine. Now I haven't created any, so you'll see that the file is currently with 0 bytes. There's also a VMXF file here, that's the one up here at the top, and that's used for some supplemental information for when a virtual machine is part of a team or VApp or things like that. So you will see these files in there. If you're taking the exam, you got to know what these file extensions are, but these are the ones that you're going to find when you're playing around with your virtual machines. So it's important to know what these files are, but actually working with the VMs is also important as well. You're going to be spending more time actually working with the VM than you are playing around with its individual files. I already showed you this screen. We did that back in the last nugget here, where we took a look at how we can adjust some of the configurations for a virtual machine. Now, one thing that's different, however, is that you'll see most of the settings now are grayed out because I can't actually manipulate many of these settings while the virtual machine is powered on. I can, however, add in certain types of devices while that VM is powered on, such as Ethernet adapters, hard disks, SCSI devices, USB controllers. So with the machine powered on, certain things can be done, certain things cannot be done. Over here in the Options tab, which we didn't look at, you'll see that I cannot reselect a guest operating system with when the virtual machine is powered on. If I have, however, conveniently, which I do have, a powered off virtual machine, I can show you some more about those settings because they're going to be exposed for me. So back under here into the Options tab, I can change the VM name if I want or reassign its guest operating system. Always make sure that this links with exactly the OS that is actually inside the virtual machine, or otherwise you're going to end up with some performance disoptimizations. Some options here for VApps. Do I want to enable those VApp options or not? I can select this here. Within the VMware tools, I have a number of options for what I want the different VCR buttons to do when I'm interacting with this virtual machine. Now, by default, you're probably not going to change these that often, but do you want to